In this episode of Creative Christians, photographer Dave DeVore joins me to talk about the fascinating world of nature photography.
Well, I've been 50 feet away from two lions that, when we were in Kenya, that had just caught a female lion from another pride trying to steal some of their meat. They had a kill in some bushes that were kind of in the shadows, and they came out and chased this female away that still had a steak in her mouth. And then they stood there and roared from about 50 feet away. But I've never heard anything quite that awesome in nature. They say you can hear a male lion roaring from 5 miles away. This was two of them in stereo directly at us. It literally shook your whole insides.
That's photographer Dave DeVore, today on Creative Christians. My name is Tim Risto. I'm a creative, a filmmaker and writer. I'm also a Christian. Many of my friends are also Christian creatives, writers, filmmakers, actors, musicians, photographers, and artists. Who are these people, and how does their faith infuse their creativity? These are stories of creative Christians. And welcome to another new episode of Creative Christians, the podcast series that explores Christian creatives, their talents, their faith, and what they're doing at the intersection of both. I'm your host, Tim Risto. Thank you so much for joining us once again for another new episode. Today's guest is nature photographer Dave DeVore. I met Dave through our mutual associations at Redeemer Lutheran Church and School in Austin. In fact, I first met Dave at one of the school's musicals that my son was performing in at the time. I was videotaping it, and Dave was photographing it. I had heard about his skill as a photographer long before meeting him. His reputation preceded him, as they say, and it wasn't long after we met that I quickly recognized not only was he a talented photographer, but he had this wonderful heart for ministry as well. Dave's a member there at Redeemer, and he's done a lot of photography for the church and school over the years. But he's also gone on 20 mission trips so far with the church. Dave is a member of the North American Nature Photography Association. He has also recently trained to become a fully licensed drone pilot. Dave has a very down-to-earth personality, and I think you'll appreciate his folksy charm. So, without further ado, I'm very excited and pleased to be able to welcome photographer Dave DeVore to Creative Christians. Dave, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Tim. It's a pleasure. This is a special day for me. It would have been my mother's 95th birthday.
Oh, my gosh.
So, and I owe a lot to her for where I am in my faith walk.
That's fantastic. How long since she passed?
That was 1992.
92.
So it's been a long time. Yeah, she was only 62 years old.
Yeah.
Or 1990, sorry.
Yeah. Well, happy heavenly birthday to your mom today. That's
I know
fantastic.
where she is.
Yeah, amen. Amen to that. Isn't that great assurance of knowing? Let's start kind of at the beginning. How did your love for photography, first begin and then ultimately develop into where you're at today with it?
That's a good question. My grandfather was a real gadget nut, and he had film cameras, of course, and film video. And I remember as a little kid being taught to water ski in Florida, and he would be filming while he's bouncing around. And my brother actually found some of those films, and they're absolutely terrible by my standards today, but it was still cool that, he had that interest in being able to do that, and pictures of us kids when we were little. Yeah. And so I kind of picked up that love of gadgets from him. Yeah. I remember as a little guy, I had a Brownie, which is the older folks in the audience will know what that is.
My dad had a Brownie too.
And eventually an Instamatic that had flash cubes, where you got 4 flashes to a cube. And
it cycled around, right? Yeah.
And that was the first camera that I remember where you had a little cartridge with the film in it, where you didn't have to put it on the spool yourself, and you end up dropping it, expose it to light, you ruin it, all kinds of bad things like that.
Right.
And I also remember a Polaroid, I think they were called a One Touch, that you didn't have to do the developer on it and do anything. It would just come out, and in 1 minute you had a picture, and I always thought that was pretty cool.
Instamatic kind? Is that kind of?
It was I know the Instamatic was a Kodak that actually used film.
Yeah.
And the Polaroid was actually an instant camera where the picture would spit out of the camera when you took it, and then you wait 1 minute and it would develop before your eyes, which is like magic.
My dad had one of those too. Do you remember your first camera?
Yeah, it was probably that Brownie.
The Brownie.
I remember my first real camera was a digital camera that I used on a trip to Israel and Egypt with Dr. Paul Meyer back in 2006, and that was pretty cool.
Oh, my gosh.
Where I was able to get the pyramids, and he was absolutely astounded when I was able to take a 3-shot panorama. Yeah. And there was a guy walking by the pyramids, and he was in each of the 3 pictures when it got stitched together. So that was
that's phenomenal.
Kind of a cool thing. So digital was a complete game changer because now photography was almost free.
Yeah.
You weren't spending all that money on film and on developing, and you could hit delete when you didn't like something. So it's made it just a whole nother ball game now. People ask me, how can you afford a $2,000 camera body with no lens? I mean, it's useless. It's just a camera without a lens.
Right.
And I'll go, well, if I was doing film now at maybe 100,000 shots a year, it might be costing me $50,000 to $75,000 in developing and supplies. And I mean, it's a bargain.
Oh, absolutely. How and why did you become fascinated with nature photography? Because that's really what you've kind of settled on, right?
It is. And I had done quite a bit of photography, just family vacation type stuff. Mm-hmm. And then at Redeemer, from 2005 to 2009, we built 2 churches in Mexico before it got too dangerous with the cartels. So I would make a photo CD for all the guys that went on the trip and for the church so that their families and future people that might come on the trip with us could see what it was all about. Right. Because my first trip, there was nothing like that. And I was going into another country. I didn't know the language. Right. It was a great leap of faith. And that was I could see where that would be a big speed bump for a lot of people. And if I could maybe, part of my purpose in doing this was to make that easier for people to say yes when the Lord called them to go and do mission work to spread the gospel. Yeah. And so that was kind of the start of my ministry with that. And then when we couldn't go to Mexico anymore, when that door closed, God opened a window to Kenya for me. Oh, and when I got to go on photo safaris there, it just opened up a whole nother world for me as far as all the different animals, the incredible flowers, the birds. I mean, just unbelievable. It blossomed from there. I just had a passion for it from then on to glorify God through his creation, because it tells us in Romans that we're without excuse. We can see him and his invisible qualities through what he's created. Yeah. And so it's, I love it when I run into an atheist that wants to confront me, and they're my favorite people to witness to, because at least they're firm in their belief. And if you can convince them otherwise, they're not moderate anymore. They're not wishy-washy. They're a champion like C.S. Lewis or Lee Strobel or St. Paul. Mm-hmm. Yes. Some of my heroes that have changed from one side to the other.
Definitely.
And so I'll always compliment them on their faith, and it totally floors them when a Christian compliments them on their faith, and they go, "What?" And I go, "Yeah, you have to have much more faith to believe what you do than what I do."
Yeah.
And then we start the conversation in a loving way, non-confrontational.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it's always a lot of fun.
It's great to look for those natural approaches to things that aren't forced, but they're just a natural way to bring it into the conversation.
Just be ready with that answer we're supposed to have.
Well, as a photographer, let's look at that angle first. Kenya, what do you have to do to prepare for a trip like that, going overseas, having all the batteries, all the accessories, that you're well prepared so that when you get there, you've got what you need to capture that photo, that moment?
Well, traveling light is very important because they've got pretty big restrictions on the amount of weight that you can have, and it's gotten even less. Yeah. And I refuse to have thousands of dollars worth of camera gear anywhere but in my carry-on.
Yeah.
It's going to be with me at all times.
Absolutely.
The other thing is that most of the time we're on these safaris, we're on gravel or dirt roads with lots of dust in an open air van or a Range Rover that you're standing up in the open air, and if somebody's driving in front of us, we've got all this dust. And changing lenses is really not a great option. You don't want to be doing that and getting all kinds of dirt in your camera. So I'll take two bodies. I'll have one with a maybe an 18-300 lens. It's kind of all-purpose, like for travel. It's fairly lightweight, where I can do everything from landscapes to zooming in a fair amount. And then I'll have a longer lens. In my case, it's a 150-600 Sigma that probably weighs about 4.5 pounds. Wow. Plus the body. And so I try not to be changing lenses except for maybe when we're in our rooms. Mm-hmm. So I may change lenses and bodies for like during the week taking pictures of our mission work. Yeah. But when I'm out on the safaris, the lenses are on those cameras and they're not going to move. Yeah. Also, I don't believe in expensive low pro or other brand name camera bags that just advertise that you've got thousands of dollars in that bag. So I'll have a nondescript backpack with me that nobody knows what's in there. Right. And I'll pack T-shirts and stuff around the gear so it doesn't get banged up. Mm-hmm. As far as batteries go, I bring plenty of those with me. I usually have enough batteries to where I can go several days if I don't have power, because there's rolling blackouts in third world countries, storms, you name it. Sometimes we're out in the middle of nowhere, like I was just at Mount Kilimanjaro for 4 or 5 days. And
wow, that must have been amazing.
It's incredible. I got to see it on a clear day, which most of my professional photographer friends say it's about 1 out of 10 days. They've gone sometimes several trips and never seen the mountain, just clouds. Wow. And I had it perfectly clear. I was able to get a team picture of my mission team in front of Mount Kilimanjaro on a beautiful sunny day.
Wow, fantastic.
So we're blessed.
That's nature photographer Dave DeVore today on Creative Christians. You've got some photos that are really just capture like birds in flight, animals in motion. How are you able to be there at the moment? I mean, all the little things I know we don't often think about, but being still, even your breathing, do you hold the camera, do you use tripods? What's your whole process and procedure for doing wildlife photography like that?
Well, right before COVID, the Bastrop Audubon Society asked me to give a talk on that, and I thought they wanted to know about the birds, and what they really wanted to know was the exact question you just asked. Mm-hmm. And I literally came up with 35 different tips that when I teach people photography, it's usually hands-on, actually being out in the environment, doing what we do, and then giving pointers as we go along. And how I do that is I find out where the person is already in their photography knowledge, and where I may have to teach them settings or that kind of thing. And if they're past that, then most of the time it's more about what you just asked, the animal behavior, how to be in the right place at the right time. Yeah. For instance, I just came back from New Mexico, and I was getting pictures of the sandhill cranes taking off at dawn in front of beautiful sunrises. And on a photo workshop, one of my mentors, Jeff Parker, taught me several years ago that the sandhill cranes are always in family groups of 4 to maybe 7 or 8 birds. Mm-hmm. And one of them is the alpha bird. He's the boss of the family. Mm-hmm. And you watch, and when one of the birds dips its head ever so slightly, in the next 2 or 3 seconds, they're all going to be running across the water. They can't lift off. They're too big, so they got to be kind of like a coot or a cormorant, where you see all the splashing and mayhem and water flying everywhere. Yeah. And then you get that whole sequence maybe with a burst of pictures as they're taking off. And with any luck, you get them silhouetted against the sunrise as they gain altitude.
And you're hand-holding for a photo.
I'm hand-holding, yes. There are situations where a tripod with what they call a gimbal head works real well, where you're kind of like a machine gunner. Yeah, and that works well when you have birds in maybe on a roost, like out in Taylor is a beautiful example of that called Murphy Park, where there's hundreds of egrets and herons, just amazing all summer long. And I'll teach people on a tripod out there, but I personally prefer handheld. I think a tripod restricts a lot of what I'm able to do.
Yeah.
Another thing that I've developed over the years is I used to have my camera on a shoulder strap down at my hip.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of birds in flight, as you talked about. By the time I can raise up from my hip, the shot is gone, or the bird is past parallel with me, and you're just getting a shot of its backside, which is not as interesting as a bird coming at you.
Right.
So what I've done is I've put that big lens and big camera on a shoulder harness where my left arm is always underneath it. And the minute I see something out of the corner of my eye, I'm already raised up and firing, while the other people have their jaws dropped open at what they're seeing and they never get the shot.
Right.
So one of the few skills that I actually have is that quick draw and worry about it later. Just start shooting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So between behavior, knowing what they're going to do, raptors like ospreys, which is also called a fish eagle in other parts of the country, before they fly out of a tree, they will always lean forward, and then I say they lighten the load, and then and then they go.
Right.
Birds always take off and land into the wind, just like aircraft. So if you can get out in front of the subject with the sun at your back and on your subject and the wind blowing into their face, you're going to get that lift off where they're coming right at you instead of away from you. So you're looking for that behavior where they lean forwards, and then you're ready, and then when they go, you get this incredible shot. But besides being there and having patience and taking a lot of time, it's knowing those little behaviors.
Yeah, definitely.
That tip you off as to what they're going to do.
You have to understand, like any photographer, your subject.
Mm-hmm.
And so understanding, I assume you go out to specific environments or habitats looking for a particular animal, knowing that, this bird tends to roost here or what have you. I mean, not necessarily knowing what you're going to get all the time, but at least you go probably with a specific idea.
Well, a lot of it's experience, knowing where you're going, having been there many times before. Mm-hmm. I live right within a mile of a pond in my neighborhood called Mills Pond that a lot of my pictures are posted from, and I'm there almost every day of the year. Oh, wow. And so in the winter, when there's no leaves on the trees, we see where the birds are starting to build their nests. And so we have an incredible advantage over people that just show up in the spring when there's already leaves. At least I know the spot to be where that hawk might be, or some other bird that's built a nest like a hummingbird. We found hummingbird nests, which are only about the size of 2 golf balls put together. Mm-hmm. You would never find that unless you saw them actually building the nest. So you've got to be there for that. So making a regular study of one particular place is a real good discipline where you know it. I've lived since 2015 there, so for 8 years, I know exactly season in and season out what's going to happen and what's going to be where. Yeah. So that's a huge advantage. One of my other little skills is as part of my groups that I take out is I'm a what they call the Major League Scout. I find places to go, and some of how I do that is with Google Maps. I'll look for water. Wildlife is always going to be near water. Yeah. And then if it's got public access, like it's a public park or it's a beach or whatever, maybe the Colorado River, I'll find the likely places that I want to go where I may find the species that I'm looking for. Right. And so I'll use those Google satellite maps to narrow things down. And then, of course, before I take a group anywhere, I've already scouted it out, maybe spent a couple of days seeing the lay of the land. So then I look like I'm magic when I walk right up and there's a hawk or whatever it is we're looking for.
So of those 35 points, that you identified, are there a couple others that are really, you think, key, that are kind of just universal, that are just really important?
Well, you mentioned the breathing. When you're shooting a big lens at long range, it is similar to a sniper. And so you do what snipers do. You breathe completely out, and you take the shot when you've completely exhaled. That's when you're going to be at your most relaxed, with the least tremors in your body, so you're not going to have any shake. Modern camera bodies and lenses have quite a bit of vibration reduction where they can help quite a bit with that.
Image stabilization.
Image stabilization is what Canon calls it. Nikon calls it vibration reduction. Sigma calls it optical stabilization. They all have to have their own nomenclature.
Exactly.
But that's a key point. Another thing is developing techniques like panning, which I'll do at a rookery like that, Murphy Park and Taylor, where you've got large birds like egrets and herons that move in a predictable fashion where they're not all over the place like a warbler or a kinglet. That's when you can do that, then you're really at the top of your game. But the big, slow-moving stuff, you learn to pan with those handheld or on a tripod. And then you can
kind of that fluid motion.
You got to be real fluid. Yeah. And when I'm teaching, it's kind of like throwing a pass in football. You almost have to feel like you're leading the subject, like you're going just a little too fast. Yeah. If you feel like you're just a little too fast, you're probably going to get a good sharp shot. And if you're doing slower shutter speeds, you can get a beautiful effect where the background is blurred behind the bird. You see that in race car photos all the time.
Right.
And where the crowd is blurred and the car is perfectly sharp. Well, that's a real pro that really knows how to pan.
Yeah.
And they might be doing that at a pretty low shutter speed, like a 30th of a second or a 60th. It's pretty amazing how low you can go if you're good at panning.
And still get it in focus.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. How do you try and blend in with the environment? I assume a lot of animals, you don't want them obviously to see you, or it will startle them, scare them off, what have you. How do you become kind of one with your environment and sneak up on your subject, so to speak?
That's definitely one of the 35 points.
Yeah.
When you look at people, their eyes are on the front of their head. Mm-hmm. Lions have the eye on the front of their head. Mm-hmm. All your predators and all your prey animals have eyes on the side of their head. The small fish, the small birds, right. So they can see about 360 degrees to be looking for that predator. So if you approach, say, a hawk in a tree directly at them, you're walking right at them and you're looking at them, that's predator, predator, predator. They're gone. Yeah. So what you do is you spot it, and then you do a zigzag pattern where you're looking out of the corner of your eye at them, but not directly at them. You act like you don't even know they're there. Yeah. And at the end of each zig, you turn and you get one or two shots, and that might be the only shot you get. And then you do another zag, and you hope that they're still there. And you can get much, much closer to your subject with this zigzag pattern than you can going directly at an animal or bird. Some of my best photography is done from a bass boat. I used to fish an awful lot, and now a bass boat is an incredible birding platform because I can use an electric trolling motor. I'll spot an eagle or an osprey in a tree 200 or 300 yards away when I'm driving with the gas motor, and I'll stop and I'll be real still for a while, and then I'll slowly get up and get the trolling motor into the water and be sitting on the front of the boat, just like fishing, but instead I'm hunting with the camera, and then I do that zigzag pattern with the boat ever so slowly. It might take 45 minutes to get close, but sometimes I'm only 50 feet away from an osprey with a big lens where I can do just an incredible close-up and be ready for that liftoff shot that we talked about.
Yeah.
So you've done all this 45 minutes and all this preparation. Once you get there, if you don't know about that behavior of when they're going to take off, you've wasted all that time because they're going to take off when you look away for a second.
Right. In an instant. Boom,
right.
They're gone.
But knowing that, so all that preparation pays off even with the technique of how to approach them.
Yeah.
But that realizing that we're a predator is a huge point.
Have you ever been caught in a position where they've seen you and targeted you, let's say a lion or something? Or have you had any close calls?
Well, I've been 50 feet away from two lions that when we were in Kenya that had just caught a female lion from another pride trying to steal some of their meat. They had a kill in some bushes that were kind of in the shadows, and they came out and chased this female away that still had a steak in her mouth. And then they stood there and roared from about 50 feet away, and we're in a van with a pop-up top. One of my Concordia students that was with us filmed it all with his iPhone, and he was losing his mind. Luckily we're in a van, but I've never heard anything quite that awesome in nature. They say you can hear a male lion roaring from 5 miles away. This was two of them in stereo directly at us. It literally shook your whole insides.
Wow.
So
that's powerful.
It is. And people think that, wow, how could you do that? You're standing right there. I go, well, I don't want to be that guy that, it's a great shot, but it's his last shot. They literally found a camera after that tsunami in Japan floating near Hawaii, and the camera card was still good. And the guy had a picture of a 30-foot wall of water coming at him.
Oh, my God.
And it was the last picture he ever took. But
oh, wow.
I don't want to be that guy.
No, I'm with you. I've traveled with some video guys that kind of had that perspective. I'm going to be there and get the, in war zones and things like that. And I'm like, yeah, no, not me.
I'll live to take another picture.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm going to live another day to do it. It's great. You go down with your camera, but I'm gonna live another day. I think kind of along those lines. What are some of the most memorable moments where you've been in to take photos like that?
Well, I think most of those have been in Kenya. It's absolutely beautiful. People don't realize that year-round the weather is almost identical. There's some rainy or less rainy seasons, and we go during those off seasons where it's a little rainier on our mission trips so that they can be more affordable. There's some disadvantages from a nature photography standpoint. You usually have taller grass, so some of the good subjects like leopards and cheetahs might be hidden by grass where they're there, but you get very natural shots. And when people go during the high season, there might be 300 other vans around an elephant watering hole, and that's not a good picture with all that in the background. I'm out there with only one or two where I can make it look like I'm just out there all by myself, which I almost am.
So you really look to isolate your subjects as much as possible.
Yes, and so that it's natural. I'm a member of the North American Nature Photography Association, and they've got an 11-page code of ethics, about not taking pictures of captured animals or at game farms, that kind of stuff. That their whole vibe is to be in the wild, and that's what I like to do. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but the picture of a bear standing on its hind legs roaring at you just because they're getting ready to feed him, and they're right behind him with a stake. That's great, but it's a total setup.
Yeah, exactly. You like the genuine aspect
nature.
Of yeah, I love that.
It's almost a sport. If I can do this out in real nature, that's a real deal.
I'm talking with Dave DeVore, nature photographer. Let's talk about some of your favorite photos. Talk about this one up there right now. This was one from Kenya, correct?
No, this is from Roswell, New Mexico.
Oh, Roswell.
So
okay.
There's a National Wildlife Refuge there called Bitter Lake National Wildlife Refuge. Yeah. And when I was going to go on a photo workshop to Bosque del Apache, which is world famous in New Mexico, that was going to be 12 hours away, and I was by myself. So I looked for something 8 hours away, which Roswell was, and I was not interested in UFOs, but I did, by doing my normal scouting thing, found a wildlife refuge that had what they call lesser sandhill cranes. These are a little bit smaller than the ones that they have in Bosque del Apache. Same species, but a smaller version. And they also have snow geese there, tens of thousands of both of these birds.
Wow.
And the attraction for a wildlife photographer is that at dawn, they all take off in unison, maybe 1 out of 5 times. It's called a blast off. And that sound, when you're in the middle of that, is right up there with those 2 lions roaring at me. It's awesome. Like Niagara Falls is the only other thing I can think of that
power of sound.
The power, and sometimes they take off right over you. And my more experienced mentors that have been with me gave me one piece of advice, and that was, if you look up, make sure your mouth is closed, because you will never forget that taste. So anyway, this shot was total serendipity. We can normally plan a shot like this with a app on your phone called Photo Pills. It has about 20 different photography planning little applications in it. They call it photo pills because these are all different little pills that know how to do one thing or another. Well, one thing it does is it knows how to tell you where the sun and the moon are going to be any hour of the day or night, any day in history, past, present, or future. And so if you know there's going to be a super moon on a certain day, you can plan where that's going to be, where you should be to get that picture. And we didn't even plan this. We were doing sunset where the cranes and the snow geese were going to be landing on their roosting area. They roost overnight in shallow water that they can stand in as a defense against the land predators like coyotes and bobcats. And occasionally some of them get a little too close to the shore and get picked off, but their defense is safety in numbers. And the fact that they're on the water and it's cold, that makes them less likely to be predated like that. And so we were getting pictures of these birds coming in at sunset. The sun is at our back, and we're getting the beautiful, what photographers call golden hour light on them, where it's absolutely just scrumptious, warm yellow. That lasts for about 20 minutes to half an hour. Golden hour is kind of a misnomer, really. It's a briefer period. That was working out great, and it was just starting to get a little darker, and there was a supermoon that we didn't even know about. Rises up over the horizon, just so big, and then I got these 7 sandhill cranes silhouetted in front of it.
And they're flying over the, this was New Mexico, is that correct?
This is New Mexico.
New Mexico landscape. Now, was the water just below
Just below there. They were getting ready to come in for their landing, and that's a really cool shot. They look like they're coming in like hang gliders, kind of parasailing in. They drop their landing gear, their feet come down, and then just kind of float down onto the water, and this is right before they're going to make that final approach.
It's a beautiful photo. Describe to our listeners here, there's a moon kind of center frame here, and these the cranes, right? They're cranes?
Those are lesser sandhill cranes, yeah.
Sandhill cranes. There's 7 of them flying across the moon. They're in focus. You see a little bit of the New Mexico landscape at the bottom of the frame, and the moon is just glowing beautifully, and a little out of focus in the background. It's a beautiful, beautiful shot. And you mentioned something interesting, too. You talked about 7 of the cranes here. What's kind of significant about that number?
Well, one of the pro photographers in my local photo club, which is mostly professionals, we have wedding photographers, event photographers, street photographers. We've got quite a few nature photographers. We all share tips, and we have a competition every month. And so you have to have thick skin, because somebody will point out that, the ocean is not level in your picture. Is it draining to the one side? Where did you stand to get the ocean to do that? And or there's distractions on the edges of your picture that should have been photoshopped out, or you shouldn't have taken the picture that way. That kind of thing. But one of the kind of finer points that I learned is there's something in human psychology that an odd number of subjects is more pleasing, and there's something about an even number of subjects that's a little bit disturbing.
Interesting.
And so somebody will go, wow, to a shot of 3 birds, but 4, there's just something that's not right about it.
Yeah, it feels off.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, I would agree.
Might have something to do with the Trinity. Who knows? Maybe it's the way we're designed.
3 and 7 are very good numbers biblically.
Yeah, so. I got it. That's a biblical number there. That's good.
That's right. I love it.
It's one of those perfect numbers.
Well, that's a great photo. When did you take that? Was that?
That was 2 years ago.
2 years ago. Okay, nice.
This one here is, I call him Ride 'em Cowboy. Anything with behavior. It's a titmouse on the back of a gray fox.
Oh, wow. Where was this taken at?
Pedernales Falls State Park in Bird Blind.
Oh, my gosh.
Out by Dripping Springs.
Beautiful fox there. And did the titmouse stay there for a while? Or
he rode him around.
That's awesome. Now, where were you at here? This is kind of a profile side view of the fox looking to the screen left. And, the little titmouse bird is just right on his back, closer to the tail.
It's in a bird blind at Pedernales Falls State Park. They have 2 very nice bird blinds there that I get out there maybe once every 10 days to 2 weeks, year-round. And the different species of birds change whether there's a migration or not. But I called this one Ride 'em Cowboy, and the little titmouse, when you look very closely, is gray, and he's got orange under his wings. So it's a matching combination there. I've seen the same behavior in Africa. They've got birds called oxpeckers, and then we've got cattle egrets here too, where a lot of times there's birds that hang around herd animals, and they eat the insects off of them, so it's kind of a symbiotic relationship.
Oh, yeah.
So this little titmouse was actually doing that with this fox, and the fox didn't really care.
Let's talk about this one here, because birds are one of your specialties. A green And green back and orange breasted with kind of a yellow under the beak.
Oh, this is a little bee eater.
Oh.
It's called a little bee eater, and I've got a shot of one with a bee in its mouth.
Oh, my
They
gosh.
literally do eat bees.
Oh, wow.
And I've got pictures of this one with its mate, with squawking at each other and different behavior. But I just called this one mad at the world. I mean, it's just...
He's got his beak open. It's like he's shouting at the world, sitting on a branch.
This was in Kenya this June.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was blessed because I had a team of 9 of us, and we had 2 vehicles that would each hold 4 or 5 comfortably for photography.
Yeah.
And some of the people that have been with me several times before that were more there for the mission work, but really liked the resort we stay at and all of that. Some mornings they would want to sleep in and not be up at the crack of dawn and go out birding. Mm-hmm. I've got a couple of guides that have been with me for over 10 years that are absolute naturalists that know every bird, every animal. And I started out originally on animals, but once I got all the lions and the giraffes and the elephants and zebras and wildebeest and everything that I could possibly ever want, I became a strong birder here in the States. And so birding is absolutely incredible in Kenya. I've gotten 500 different species out of a possible maybe 750 at any one time. There's a lot of birds that migrate through like they do here in the U.S.
Yeah.
But over a number of trips, I've got a pretty good list of them. This is one of my favorites. These little bee eaters are just stunning looking. By being on a team like that, where some of the people decided to sleep in, other people that were new always want to see all the animals, and that's go, go, go. But if you're going to do birding, you have to be patient and maybe stay in one place for 15 or 20 minutes where you know that they're there and you're waiting for them to be on that perfect perch in the perfect light. You have the engine off on the vehicle so you don't have any vibration from the engine. And other people just don't want to put up with that. So I was blessed that 2 mornings in a row, I was able to get a vehicle to myself each morning with a different guide that are both dear friends. So we had a competition. The one guy's about my age. The other guy's a young guy. He just got his biology degree.
Oh, wow.
So we call the older guy Simon. We call him the old lion. And we call Daniel, the other one, the young lion. So we had the young lion against the old lion. And I made sure the old lion won just so that and the young lion understands he still has to grow a little bit.
That's awesome.
So I got this shot with the old lion.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, so birds are somewhat easier to capture than, say, lions or other animals?
No. Matter of fact, when I first got into nature photography, I asked somebody, what's the hardest thing that you can do? Mm-hmm. And he said, not only in nature, but in photography in general, it's birds.
Okay.
Because you never know when they're going to fly. They're flitting around. Mm-hmm. These guys sit in one place for a while, but if I'm getting an incredible shot of a kingbird or a ruby-crowned kinglet or some kind of a warbler, they might stop for a nanosecond. Yeah. And I've only got that brief little bit of time to get that killer shot. Right. So your friend in those situations is being able to shoot in bursts of 4 or 5 or 6 shots at a time. Right. More often than not, the first shot is not in perfect focus. Mm-hmm. The camera catches up. And so a lot of times number 2 or number 3 is your best shot. Yeah. What you're looking for is to get the eye with a catch light in it, or what you call the gleam in the eye. Right. That's important. I can show you 2 different pictures that are identical, one with the gleam and one without. And the one without, you go, that's nice, Dave. The one with the gleam, you go, wow. Yeah. And that's human nature also. Besides like the odd number of subjects, we always look directly for the eyes first, whether it's a person or an animal or a bird. Yeah. And so that's got to be sharp and it's got to be right. Well, that's a great point. And we're just drawn to that human connection. The eye kind of contains the emotion of a lot of it too. I can have a blur in the wings on a bird that's taking off. Maybe my shutter speed's a little too slow, and that denotes action. Yeah. And that's fine. But that eye and that head had better be sharp. I want to talk because you also, and I don't know if this has been long-term or if this is more of a recent interest for you, but kind of landscape photography. A few months ago, I know you mentioned to me about getting ready to go on this trip over the past summer to, I think it was a high school reunion in Chicago, I believe it was.
And you talked about planning going through a variety of state parks and maybe starting to get some photos there. How did that work out? Did that happen?
It worked out great. I did 3,200 miles over about 2 weeks.
Wow.
And the longest drive was up to the St. Louis area, 2 days up to Chicago.
Yeah.
And I've got friends all over the Chicagoland area that I was able to stay with and see, and that's where the high school reunion was.
Okay.
I've gotten into drone photography since last December, and I got the whole group outside of the banquet hall that we were at sunset. Wow. And I took a what they call a droney, where you have the drone maybe 10 feet up in the air with the whole group in a picture, and then I turned it on to video, and I flew out and away, kind of like you see at the end of movies like Braveheart, where you get the cast of thousands, and they used to do that with helicopters, but now the average guy can do that and probably do it better with the technology that we have now.
Probably much smoother. Easier.
Very smooth, because you can do it in an automated mode where it's going to be perfectly smooth.
So did you do a lot of drone video there in the parks, or?
I did sunrises and sunsets. I'm only about 5'7", and so I'm vertically challenged, but not anymore. Now I can be 400 feet tall if I want to be.
I love it.
That different perspective is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Especially towards the end of a sunset, where some of the deepest, most beautiful colors are down by the horizon that you might not see behind the tree line.
Yeah.
I've learned over the years that there's 3 sunrises and 3 sunsets every day. Most people aren't aware of that. There's a civil sunset or sunrise is when the sun is at the horizon, and that's what's in your newspaper or on your weather report. Yeah. And that's got certain light characteristics, certain colors. Right. Then there's one when the sun is 6 degrees below the horizon. That's called nautical sunrise or sunset. You've got enough light in the sky in order to navigate on the water. Okay. So it's a naval term. Right. And you got a different set of colors and, pinks and yellows and that kind of thing that go on then. Yeah. And then you have astronomical sunrise or sunset. That's 18 degrees below the horizon, and the light's being refracted through the atmosphere. Yeah. You'll get the beautiful deep indigos, the deep oranges, the heavy-duty reds. Right. And generally a sunrise or sunset, to do it right, will take 45 minutes to an hour, because you want to be there like on a sunset about half an hour before to almost half an hour after. Yeah. And I've made the mistake of driving home right after the nautical sunset, and then there's a fireworks that goes on for maybe 30 seconds. It's absolutely unbelievable sometimes. And I'll be driving home and I'll see it. I go, no.
I missed it. I should have stayed.
So maybe I'll look out every day. I look out at the sunset, what it's going to be like, what the clouds are predicted to be, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And maybe 1 out of 5 that I think might turn out ends up being stunning. Yeah. Maybe less than that, but you got to be there. Right. So that's part of that. There's one of those tips. You got to be there. Yes. People go, how do you see all this stuff? I go, well, I'm not walking around looking at a cell phone like 95% of the people. Right. I'm intentional.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to be there. You have to wait it. You got to be patient sometimes and be there to get the shot. Did you take any photos at the state parks, or was it just video?
Yeah. I did a lot of hiking, and I got some species I haven't gotten before. Birders, when they get a species they've never seen before, they call that a lifer. So it's my first one in my life, and they'll go on a quest to get this one particular bird. They're like a fisherman that wants to get this one species of fish that they've never caught before. It's the same sort of thrill. Oh, wow. And so one of my tips for getting lifers is go somewhere else. Because, there's different ranges in the United States where different birds are that are not here in Texas, maybe. Right. We're blessed here in Central Texas. I didn't know this when I moved here in 92. I really got into birds in the 2010s, maybe, in a big way. But we are one of the major migration paths in the entire world. Almost everything that comes from all the way as far south as South America to as far north as the Arctic Circle comes and goes through here.
Oh, my gosh.
Spring and fall.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you got to be there at the right time, and planning, again, is a big thing. There's a website called birdcast.org, and they use the National Weather Service's radar. Most birds migrate at night, and so every night they'll have a map of the whole United States, and they can literally see the swarms of warblers or orioles or woodpeckers or whatever, and they'll actually label what they are. They're in Kentucky now, they're on the way. We'll know 2 days later they're going to be here.
Right.
And so there's some of that planning aspect again. And it's not just getting up and, you can just get up and get lucky. That happens. But,
right.
It's better to put all of this knowledge in your favor.
I'm talking with nature photographer Dave DeVore. You talked about getting into photography to help to show God's creation, right? You've learned a lot from God's creation as a result of being in it, being patient with it, observing it, and photograph it. What for you have been some things that really are some takeaways from that?
Well, one thing is I think it's real easy as we grow to lose that sense of awe. And I like to try and be a 13-year-old boy that just found a toad. And it's just the coolest thing.
I love that. That's great.
And so if you can go back to being that, young boy that, everything is like, wow.
Right.
Yeah, get that wow factor back. And that's kind of what I try and share with my photography. One of my mentors, Judy Sawyer, who was one of the officers of the Travis Audubon Society and a great naturalist as well, she was getting pretty accomplished at bird photography and was a friend of mine. And she did a 1-year, 365-day challenge where somebody challenged her to do a nature picture a day on her Facebook. Yeah. And when she got done with that, and I was kind of one of her grasshoppers. She was my sensei, wax on, wax off. That's what I do with the people that follow me now. They're my grasshoppers, and I'm sensei now.
Right.
She said, okay, Dave, it's yours now in 2015. And it took me to several different plateaus where I started making myself go wow and got better and better. Yeah. And so I never stopped. So I'm in my 8th year now of not missing a day. Wow. Of at least one nature photo a day, usually 5 or 6 a day on my Facebook. Oh, and people are loving it. I've got over 2,000 followers that follow me pretty much on a daily basis. Who knows how many more people are out there. It's kind of like the letters to the editor. For every 50 people that are mad about something, only one will write that letter.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, right.
So I know there's plenty out there.
Oh, definitely.
So anyway, people will sometimes ask me on my Facebook in a private message, why do you do what you do? And it's I don't make a huge point out of religion or politics. I don't want to be a flamethrower out there. I just want to glorify God through his creation, but that'll be my answer. Yeah. I've literally had people that are either non-believers, atheists, or maybe just seekers. They just don't know. Yeah. Agnostics, say. Question me, and then we've gotten into conversations over time, maybe even Zoom calls, where I've been able to witness to them in a better way. Yeah. But the way I look at it, I think the way you live and sharing this nature with everybody prompts that question that St. Peter tells us about in 1 Peter 3:15, where we're always supposed to be prepared to give an answer for the hope that we have. Right. And it goes on to talk about being humble and doing it in the right way. I don't like beating people over the head with a Bible or my way is better than your way. And, that's worked out very well for us on our mission trips, working with Hindus and Muslims, where they see a lot of joy in the clinics that I run. It's professional, but mine is a lot looser than the way some other people run their clinics, and they see a lot of laughter. And sometimes I'll literally ask, "You've got something I don't have. What is that?" And if you're asked an honest question in another culture, it's okay to give the real answer, and that's a powerful witness when you have a personal testimony.
Why originally, where you're starting to go on these mission trips, what were the mission trips about, and then also how the photography teaching came out of as an extension of that?
Well, it started in 2007 as a project with Salem Lutheran Church in Tambaugh, was asked to duplicate what they've been doing in Honduras and other Central American places where they were doing medical, dental, and vision clinics. Okay. And dental, you can only see a limited number of people a day. Same thing with medical, and you need doctors, you need dentists, all of that. The vision clinics, you can see large numbers of people. We'll see sometimes 5,000 people or more in a week.
Yeah.
And it's fairly inexpensive. 2/3 of the people get reading glasses. Anybody over 40 years of age, no matter where you live in the world, your arms aren't long enough to read anymore.
Yeah.
And the most refreshing thing that I hear when I'm over there, and it's absolutely amazing, is when we're interviewing the people and asking them why they came to our clinic. People over 40 will say, I can't read my Bible anymore. It brought me to tears the first time I heard that, because many times ours are sitting there gathering dust on our bookshelf or that kind of thing. They're hungry for it.
Wow.
And they just light up when we get the right reading glasses, and we've got a little gospel tract that they can read. And it's just pure joy. I mean, it's absolutely incredible.
I love that.
And so anyway, they were asked to duplicate that, and Redeemer joined that effort not too long after that. They invited some Redeemer members to come with them, and they paid for their whole way.
Oh, wow.
It was like a St. Andrew, come and see.
Yeah.
Or Philip always did that. Come and see, come and taste. It's good.
Right.
And the beauty of most all the projects that we have at Redeemer are that most of them have started at the congregation level, where somebody had a heart for one particular kind of ministry. And when it grew to a certain point, it already had natural leaders that had that heart. And then the church blessed it, rather than saying, we're going to do this from the pulpit, which that works too. But I think this is a beautiful model. Right. So once those people came back and were just on fire for this, I was in the second wave. And became one of the leaders at Redeemer for that effort, and have been on and off the chairman of our mission board over the years. So they seem to think I have a heart for missions. What we do over there is not only the reading glasses, we also bring 2 machines with us called autorefractors that are battery operated, that can examine your eyes for distance vision. And if you fail an eye chart test, which is the first thing that people get is a regular eye chart, then you get tested with this machine. And if it's a average or a not very strong prescription, we can make distance glasses right then and there on the spot.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
It's pretty cool. And they're round, so we used to call them Gandhi glasses. But now people are too young to know who Gandhi was, so now we call them Harry Potter glasses.
Oh, there we go. Yes. You got to keep up with the culture.
But they have to be round so you can rotate the lenses to correct for the astigmatism, to true up the eyes, to square them up.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But and that's all well and good. Maybe about 10 or 15% of the people will get distance glasses. Many people get both reading and distance glasses. The thing that really just gets me going is that we take $1,500 with us on each trip, and that's enough for 50 people to get one eye done for a cataract. So 50 people that were walking into walls that were blind before we got there are seeing. So it's a miracle. I mean, sight to the blind.
Wow.
And we only do one eye because it's real surgery, just like in the States, how it used to be. You didn't want to risk an infection and lose the sight in both eyes.
Right.
So when we come back on a future trip, people can come and get the second eye done as well.
Okay.
We hadn't gone for 3 years. We were supposed to go in 2020, and then the world changed. We were going to be going in May, and of course March, April is when COVID hit. This was 3 years in between, and it was going to be my 20th trip. I was just waiting to get that, even number somehow.
Right, exactly.
So when we finally were able to go, we still took the normal $50, and I had to call back every night to Pastor Kevin at Redeemer. I need more. And so it was no problem. We ended up with 97 people getting cataract surgeries.
That is amazing. What a blessing.
This is just wonderful, this mercy mission, what we do where we help people.
Yeah.
But our true purpose is it's an evangelism clinic disguised as a vision clinic.
Yes.
We're in disguise. So everything that we do is geared towards the gospel in that. And the reason for that, why the project started in the first place, was the Muslims, particularly from Saudi Arabia, decided to start bringing in mosques and boys' schools in big numbers into Kenya.
Oh, wow.
And so they were coming in from the east, and we were going to push back from the west, was the whole purpose here.
Yeah.
The country was already maybe 75% Christian, but Islam is very attractive to cultures south of the equator where cultures are more group-oriented rather than individualistic like we are or the way Northern Europeans are.
Right.
And so they take care of their own widows, their own sick very well. They have an alms for the poor on top of their tithes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's some pretty wonderful things that they do, and that's attractive to a group culture.
Yes.
And so we needed to be able to come and proclaim the gospel and push back against that as kind of the driving force. The Great Commission is our theme, our rallying cry, our vision statement.
Yes.
It's all about that.
That's beautiful.
So people do get a gospel presentation in their own language before they come into the clinic because they're going to have to wait somewhere because they're there in large numbers. So we have them outside in tents, and they get the gospel in groups of 8 to 10 people, so it's small enough where they feel comfortable to ask questions of the presenters. We have what's called an evangelism cube, which is it looks like a Rubik's Cube, but it folds out into 7 different pictures that describe the gospel story.
Oh, beautiful.
It's incredible. It works in any language. And even here, when I show them at Redeemer to kids that have iPhones and high tech and everything else, it still makes you look.
Yeah.
And there's a little tract that goes along with it. These can be used anywhere in the world.
Right.
And we've got tracts in both Swahili and in English because both are spoken there. It was a British colony.
Yeah.
So they get a gospel presentation, and they've got this little tract in their hand when they get into the vision clinic.
Right.
They get an eye chart examination right away to see if they need distance glasses.
Yeah.
And then they either get their eyes checked with this machine we talked about, or they go to triage. Triage is the heart of our clinic. The French developed that term during a war where a third of the people, you couldn't help them no matter what you did, you're wasting your time.
Yeah.
A third of the people, you can wait to help them till later and they'll still survive.
Yeah.
You help the third that
Needs
need
it the
help right
most.
now.
Right.
And so we're kind of doing that with the gospel, but 100% of the people need that.
Yeah.
So we do have a conversation right away about why did you come to our clinic? What's the problem with your eyes? I can usually spot a cataract a mile away. I've gotten good at that. I'm just a computer repair guy and a photographer, but I've become one of these guys too. They'll tell us about not being able to maybe see when they're walking down the road. That's distance, and we know what their eye chart reading is already. So we talk about all of that, and then before we send them to doctors, we've got local doctors there we pay for every time.
Okay.
If they need a stronger distance prescription than what we can do with our machine, they'll see a Kenyan doctor from the health service to do that.
Yeah.
And the Kenyan health system has got a plan to prevent or eradicate preventable blindness by 2025. And there's 2 pages in their plan that includes our project as one of the ways they're going to do it.
Wow.
So, that's pretty cool.
What an amazing service and ministry you all provide to the people there in Kenya. Yeah.
We ask if there's anything they didn't understand during the gospel presentation by our local evangelists, if they have any questions at all. And many times we'll have on their registration card that Lutheran Hour volunteers fill out for us. They're called Nuru over there. That's part of the International Lutheran Hour.
Okay.
We'll know what faith they are. So we see if they're a Catholic or they're already a Lutheran or something else. We're not going to spend a lot of time evangelizing because we know they're already saved.
Yeah.
But if they're from another faith, we'll spend all the time that we need, if they have questions.
Oh, yeah.
So when we get done having that spiritual conversation with them, then we always ask them if there's anything we can pray for them over.
Yes.
I've only had 2 people in 20 trips politely refuse to be prayed over. They think it's really special, even the Muslims, even the Hindus, that we've come halfway around the world. And because we're not from there, they'll tell us about maybe a drunken husband that beats them. Maybe they've got 3 kids that have gone through university and none of them can find a job. Just terrible things that we pray over them. We lay hands on them one-on-one. I mean, it's just a beautiful moment.
Yeah.
That's probably my favorite part of what we do. I mean, the spiritual healing that we're able to offer. And many times baptisms happen right there. Or they get signed up for the equivalent of a confirmation class to come to the faith or learn more about the faith to see if they want to become a Christian.
Wow, what a great ministry. And yeah, I could see that where being in the moment there really kind of, I guess you could say, kind of that grassroots ministry, just being there one-on-one with people, praying over them, people in need, physical need, spiritual need, and being able to be there for them. What a great ministry you all do there.
It works both ways, because most of the people there that I've met that are Christians have more faith in their little finger than I've got my whole body. When they pray for their daily bread, it's for real.
For real, yeah.
So that's a pretty amazing thing. In fact, I write a blog during every trip, every day, that I can get word out by internet to let people know what to pray for, what we're doing, how it's going, how God has moved in our lives and used us. And after my third trip, I wrote a long blog post where I talked about how I felt guilty. I felt selfish because I was being blessed every time more than I could possibly give.
Yeah.
And one of the pastors from another congregation wrote me a beautiful note, and he said that, Dave, you've discovered God's economy. He says, that's what we pastors call it. Everything is God's anyway. And if you're being blessed like that, it means you're doing His will. You're right down the middle of the road. You're in exactly the right place. And He wants to bless both the giver and the receiver. And so now I have that 13-year-old boy sense of awe, like, surprise me, Lord.
Right.
What are you going to have us do this time?
Right. Whose life can I touch today? Yeah.
Yeah, put somebody else in front of me right now.
Right. You get fired up for it. I think that's so important. And mission trips are always a great way to be able to connect with people like that and be there and see needs that we don't often see in our daily lives in America, to get out there and be able to help people and truly, truly show the love of Christ to others in ways that we get too comfortable with sometimes here in the States.
Well, there's something else about this triage. Sometimes, we ask people to do every job in the clinic. Any one of them can be learned by a monkey in 15 minutes, is what Pastor Kevin likes to say. Triage may be a little different, and actually making the glasses, that takes a little bit, and examining the eyes, but I mean, anybody can learn any of this. But if somebody has a heart for doing this one-on-one, praying over people and then helping route them to the right, the triage from a clinic standpoint is the traffic cop. You're going to get reading glasses, then you're going to go see somebody for distance glasses, whatever, or maybe get eye drops for an infection. But a lot of times, somebody will be in that triage position for about an hour, maybe an hour and a half. And they say, Dave, I can't do this. I'm not cut out for this. I say, please go around behind the building, because I had to do this, and cry. And my first time, it just overwhelmed you. Some of the things that you hear are just incredible.
You mean the people stories?
The people stories. Yeah. And so I go, I would be worried about you if you didn't have this reaction. That would show you don't have any empathy. You could be a psycho killer or something, but you're not cut out for mission work.
Right.
The fact that this has deeply disturbed you means that this is exactly where you need to be, and you just need to get a little bit thicker skin.
Right.
And some of the people that had that reaction have become absolute prayer warriors. And you couldn't get them out of there if you had to, but that first reaction was, please take me away from this. It's, go take a break, that's fine. And then we'll get back into it, and maybe I'll sit with you and we'll do it together for a while. And you can learn some of the ways that I've learned to relate to people and get them to tell their story. But just, a personal prayer over their exact need is it's powerful.
Nature photographer Dave DeVore, today on Creative Christians. It's not lost on me that you're helping with a vision clinic and you're a photographer. So let's briefly talk about, too, you've been teaching some photography classes, or you've been staying, I guess, after the mission trips in Kenya and leading some photography classes. How did that develop, and how's that going?
Well, I realized, maybe around 2013 or 14, that I'm already halfway around the world. I've already spent the airfare. And I've got dear friends there that are the safari drivers and guides. Most of the time, you get a twofer. The guy's your driver, and he knows everything.
Right.
He's grown up out in the jungle or whatever, and just has a passion for nature. And so I realized that I could get local prices through our dear friend Catherine Wangari, that is our lead person of the project over there. She works for our project full-time along with some others.
Okay.
And so she's our liaison that works with the health department over there, works with the Lutheran church over there to help decide where we're going to go on each of our trips.
Yeah.
Redeemer, for instance, always works in Nairobi or very close because we're a large urban church in an urban environment, and we want to see lots of people. That's our DNA. Other churches like to go out with the tribal people or small towns, and if some of our people have a heart for that, they can go with them as well.
Yeah.
As far as the photography staying over goes, I was able to get local prices where maybe for $1,200 to $1,500 for 4 or 5 days at world-class game parks like Masai Mara, or I was just down by the Mount Kilimanjaro this last time. I've been to Samburu, which is out in a desert area. I enjoyed that with one other guy that was a photographer. Nobody else stayed over on that trip.
Yeah.
So we did just birds, and we had the best birding guy, and I wanted to be in a different environment, that desert environment. And then there were some watering holes. Got us a bunch of species that we wouldn't have seen before, and a whole different experience. But we always stay in world-class lodges, and because we're right before the high season, they've just reopened, and all the staff is practicing all their hospitality and training on us, so we get treated like kings.
That's great.
At a little bit better price.
Yes.
And the meals are incredible. They're all buffets, but every buffet choice is like a entree.
Yeah.
So, we gain weight on this, which is kind of absurd, but so we'll fly into an area, or we might drive for a half a day to get to where we're going to be for the next 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
And then anybody that wants to learn anything about nature photography and my 35 tips and what you do here and all that, I'm happy to do that. I do that just as a fellow Christian, as a fellow friend. It's not for a fee. I mean, I could lead these for pay over there and be charging $6,000 to $10,000 a person like people do. But this is kind of an added benefit of coming along.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Other people just want to see the animals. Maybe they want to hang around the pool with an umbrella drink.
Yeah.
And that's fine too. We're done with the mission. It's
right.
You get a chance to recharge, to maybe reflect on what you've seen. I've only had one person in, let's see, I've been 20 times, but I've been to a number of other places. It's been a bunch. Yeah. Only one person in all these times has said during their first trip, while we're still there, I want to come back. Usually it's 3 or 4 months after the trip. You keep thinking of what more you could have done. And God starts leading you. Maybe you're praying about it. And then a fair number of them have become repeat offenders like me.
Yeah, exactly. Well, is this something that's open to the public? If others wanted to come on a mission trip like this, like the Redeemer one, is that open just to Redeemer members, or how would that work?
Well, we fill in with Redeemer members, teachers, Concordia students, people that want to do ministry, but we've always got some extra spots. And the main requirement is that you're a mainstream Christian, because this is all about evangelism.
Absolutely.
Many of our people may have business schedules or other schedules where they can't stay over for the extra part of the trip that I do, and they just come for the mission, and that's it. And it's about a 10-day trip. We leave on a Thursday, and then we get back on a Saturday night. So it's about 10 days on the nose. You have a travel day each way, because it's 2 8 to 10 hour flights. You got time zone changes, you got layovers, all of that. And so we get there on a Friday night, so we've got the weekend to get acclimated to 8 or 9 hours difference time. So we're sharp on Monday through Friday for the clinic.
Absolutely. Well, and you mentioned your blog too, sharing about your time over there, and we'll put a link in the description for this episode too, with a link to that we can share about. I know you had some neat stories, some neat moments that you shared about too on this last trip. So we'll link to that if anybody wants to read Dave's blog from his most recent mission trip. I understand you took something like 1,400 photos a day there. What's your selection and editing process like, when you get back from not just Kenya, but any photo shoot?
That's taken several years to perfect. I used to take 1,000 in the morning here in Texas.
Yeah.
I've gotten that down to 200 or 300. I'm more selective now, but sometimes it's a 30-shot burst on a bird in flight, and you can't avoid having numbers of pictures.
Right.
So I'm blessed to be in this incredible photo club with a lot of professionals.
Yeah.
And one of them is just an amazing wedding photographer and events, and they have the same problem. They've got way more pictures than they could ever possibly use.
Right.
And you can't process all of them. You wouldn't live long enough. So there's a program called Photo Mechanic. I happen to have the Adobe subscription, and that comes with a program in it called Bridge. And what Bridge does is it's a full screen photo viewer that you can zoom in 100%, 200, 400%.
Right.
Most photographers will tell you that a 100% zoom, if you see that your subject is sharp, that's good enough.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't have to be any better than that.
Right.
Anyway, the idea behind it is I can, in 15 minutes, go through about 1,000 pictures rapidly, and I can rate them. I use a number rating system, 1 through 5. I usually only rate 4 is a really good picture. A 5 is wow, right out of the camera. That might not need much work.
Yeah.
A 3 might be my friend Tim is in it, and it's a snapshot, but I'm going to keep it because sentimental reasons, we were there together.
Right, exactly.
So anyway, I go through once very rapidly, and then I'm able to sort them by the ones that are rated and not rated and delete as a block right away. All the ones I didn't rate, they're gone.
Yeah.
Now, the secret is I go through a second time because I've already seen them once.
Right.
And I know I've got a better one of this. I got a better one of that. And unrate them.
Yeah.
And then delete those.
Right.
Now, out of 1,000 pictures, I might be down to 150 to 200 that are worthy of maybe processing.
Yeah.
And maybe I might only process a quarter of those that are really stunning, but the rest are worth keeping. And maybe sometime down the road, I sell one of those pictures, but I've got a similar one where I've had to give up the rights to the picture.
Yes, exactly.
So I want a second version of it that was taken 1/10 of a second away from it.
I love it. Well, that's a time-consuming process to go through, I know, but an important one. If we took a peek inside Dave DeVore's photography bag, what is some of the gear that we might find there?
You'll find 3 Nikon bodies in there. There's a wildlife camera called a D7500. The original D7200, that's part of the series, was probably the best wildlife camera they came up with around 2012 or so, and I waited and waited and waited for one of those to be available. I almost bought a reconditioned or a used D7100. I got tired of waiting, and Precision Camera called me up and said, "You've got the first one in town."
Nice.
A lot of times I buy stuff online, but they can get me something a lot of times where I'm the first one in town. That's what's called a crop body, by the way, the D7500. What that means is the sensor is only 1.5 times. It's 1.5 times smaller than what they call a full sensor, which is a 1-inch. It's the same as 35 millimeter slide film. So that's where the dimensions came from film days, exactly.
Right.
So a crop body, what it does for you is my 600 millimeter lens behaves like it's 900 millimeters. It gives you a perceived longer reach. And everybody always wants longer, closer. When I'm teaching, I usually like to have people have maybe an 18 to 300 or an 18 to 250 and learn to be sneaky and learn to zoom with their feet, because those skills will always serve you well.
Right.
The big lens sometimes won't.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're actually too close for it.
Yeah. You got to move back.
So, it's great to have all of that on a big lens. But so anyway, I've got that. I've got a D500, which is still considered one of the best wildlife cameras out there, and that's also a crop body. I've got 300,000 shots on that body, and it's still going strong.
Oh, wow. Nice.
It's amazing. I can't believe it myself.
Right.
And then I've got a Z6 II, which is a full frame mirrorless camera. And I don't think it's quite as good at locking on the autofocus on an action shot. But when I do get it, I get just a killer shot, and the low light performance is amazing. I can almost shoot in the dark with it.
Right.
And so I forced myself to go mirrorless.
Yeah.
Battery life usually stinks. That's one downside.
Yeah.
One big upside is when you're looking through the electronic viewfinder, you see what you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
You know if you left the lens cap on.
Right. Good point.
or if you've got settings that are totally screwed up where you forgot to change them from the last time you shot.
Right.
The first rule is, look at your settings, but
Yeah.
we don't always follow the rules.
True.
Or you grab the camera and you're all excited because you got a subject right there.
Yeah, you're ready to shoot. Yeah. I love it. Nice.
So there's those three bodies, and then I've got a 10 to 20 wide angle Nikon lens,
Okay.
which is beautiful for astrophotography and for landscapes, because 10 millimeters, even on a crop body, is still pretty wide.
Yeah.
And then 18 to 300 Sigma lens, which is a great walking around lens.
Yeah.
I personally really research my lens purchases, and if the extra money for the Nikon lens does not make sense, I'll go with Sigma or maybe Tamron. Make very good lenses that work just fine.
Yeah.
And then my big lens is a 150 to 600, so I've got just about every range covered between all of that.
Yeah. Very nice. Nice collection there. Nice set of gear. I
But
like
not
it.
a lot of stuff. Some people have 20 lenses.
Yeah.
I'm able to cover it with zooms. I just don't think I'd be changing primes in and out. It'd be a lot of lens changing.
I've had that frustration with video too. Or I've bought some primes over the years and thinking, oh, it's nice. And I'll start out with them and them always wishing I could get in closer or whatever, and I can't always move. So having that ability to just zoom in is just so helpful. But I know there's a lot of guys that love primes.
I had a nifty 50 for a while. It just, that 18 to 300 covers it all. If you're doing portraits, you're somewhere between 70 and maybe 120.
Right.
You just have to know the ranges, and they do just fine.
Yeah.
There is room for prime lenses. The light gathering is just beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe sports, in a dimly lit place, like a basketball arena or
True.
that kind of thing. But for what I do, generally I've got plenty of light during most of the day, and when I'm in the evening or in the first crack of dawn, I'm shooting as wide open as the lens will go, and I don't worry about noise anymore. I'll let the ISO go as high as it has to, because the software tools we have now to do sharpening and noise reduction are absolutely phenomenal.
Amazing. Yeah, agreed. Any particular favorite photographers that have been either mentors or just inspirations for you?
Well, I always loved nature shows as a kid, so whoever the videographers were for Wild Kingdom with Marlon Perkins were great.
Yes.
And I always loved that Jim guy. They would always cut to a commercial while he's wrestling an alligator, and you wonder if he's going to still be there after the commercial.
Will he make it through the commercial? Exactly. While Marlon's back here in the Jeep safely watching, we'll let Jim wrestle the bear out on the tundra there.
That Jim guy did okay for himself. He ended up with a game park in Florida.
That's right, he did.
Yeah.
I remember hearing about that.
So, he's all right.
Nice.
Ansel Adams for the landscapes.
Yes.
As I got into landscapes and into nature, John Muir, the early guys, when you think of what they had to do, and he's wearing like a suit, the way they used to dress in the 1800s, climbing mountains, sitting up on a tree limb.
Right. It had to be hot. Come on. I love it.
A big old full format, camera. Just absolutely amazing. So that's pretty cool. I'm not quite that radical. I know I've known some guys that have been National Geographic guys that'll stand in cold water for 3 days waiting for the ducks to take off under the perfect light, and I'm not quite that radical.
Yeah, it takes a special breed there for sure.
What I did do, though, was when I decided to get real serious about the photography, and Facebook was already a thing, and I'd taken that challenge, I joined some groups. There's a group here in Texas called Birds of Texas. Okay. At that time, it was 35,000 members strong. It's about 95 or 100,000 strong now. And there's a Facebook algorithm that as you post and people like what you do, you first become what's called a conversation starter. So they have a little coffee mug with steaming coffee icon next to your picture. Eventually you become what's called a visual storyteller.
Okay.
It's got a little camera picture next to it. That means you post on a regular basis, and people like what you do.
Yeah.
And at one point, I haven't checked lately, I was 1 out of 82 out of a 95,000 person group.
Wow.
And how I got there was I found 3 or 4 people there that I really thought were great.
Yeah.
And I contacted each one of them for tips. And just like in my faith walk, all the best mentors don't feel threatened by you.
Mm-hmm.
You ask them, what can I do to repay you after they've given you great advice? They go, do it for the next guy.
Yeah.
And so it's somebody that's really good and at the top of their game is not threatened by somebody that wants to learn.
Right.
And if they are, then that's not somebody you want to learn from anyway.
Right. We should all always be learning in our craft, right? No matter how far we get, no matter how much we learn, no matter how advanced we get, we're always learning at everything.
You have to, or you're not progressing at all.
Exactly. If you had to list your absolute favorite photograph that you've taken, is there one that really stands out for you, or that you often get asked about, or that you just, it's representative for you of a good photograph?
I've probably got 100, but there's one that we have right here with the 2 lions. I just took this one in June. And so my goal is always to make myself go, wow. And then it should be shared. I mean, if I've done that, because I'm my own worst critic.
Absolutely.
And along with some of my friends in the photography club, oh, you should have got rid of this, or you should have done that. But
exactly. So describe this photo. And
it's a male and a female lion. And the backstory on this one is that they were both laying down, apparently asleep, about 100 yards from us when I was on one of those mornings by myself with one of my friends. It's my driver.
Right.
And he goes, Dave, watch this. He says he wants to get away from her and go to one of his other girlfriends because they're not monogamous. And so watch him try to get away without waking her up. And they're laying down right next to each other. So he's real sneaky about it. And he just about gets away and she busts him.
She looks mad.
Yeah, and he's giving it back a little bit. Yeah. There's a whole sequence of these pictures, but I think this is the best one out of them where I called this one, when Mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. So she's letting him know she's not happy about that.
That's
and
phenomenal.
So then they go for a little ways further, and they lay down again. And he thinks she's asleep again, and the exact same thing happens again.
She's watching you, buddy.
So the secret of this one, why I like this and shots like this, is there's some behavior going on.
Right.
A lot of people will see birds that are absolutely beautiful that are perched on a branch, and we bird photographers call that a bird on a stick. So a bird on a stick picture, that's great. It documents it. It's a reference photo, if you will. Yeah. It could be in the bird book, and this is what it is.
Right.
But that behavior is, catching that moment, the moment. People photography is that way too, that decisive moment that you're always looking for.
It captures emotion. It tells a story. It's more than just a portrait, right? It's got something.
I may enter that in a photo contest this coming year, and I've thought about cropping it down to just their heads, but I love the way the tails are both perked up.
I do too.
I think the way I've got it now is kind of the way I like it.
I like it too. And even just seeing their legs, their paws, there's something about their stance. It's just all very descriptive. I love that photo. That's a great one. One other quick question I'm going to throw in here. I could have asked this at the beginning. You chose nature photography. You have done some, I guess not portrait photography. You've done some people photography, for lack of a better word. Is there a reason why you really felt more comfortable settling on nature photography? Yeah,
and this is kind of funny. I've done almost every event at Redeemer for years,
right?
Along with some other pro photographers that I've learned a lot from.
Yes,
and so that's been great, and my equipment's gotten better, and I've gotten better at capturing that moment. And candid pictures are great because you can use a zoom sometimes, so you don't even know you're there.
Yeah.
You're in the other corner of the room or whatever, and you capture a candid moment. But my wise guy answer when people ask me why I do nature instead of people, I go, well, if an animal wants to eat me, at least it's honest.
Well put, sir. Well put.
Not always so much with people.
Yes, exactly.
I've done weddings as a gift for relatives and dear friends. And a couple times I've had Granny stand up in the middle of the congregation with an iPad to get a video of the exchange of the rings.
Yeah.
And this is why pros have a contract that says if that happens, too bad.
Right.
I'm the official photographer, and you need to let your guests know about that.
Exactly. Yes.
But so anyway, I really don't want to deal with that.
I hear you. I can understand.
I may be in danger with animals, but what a way to go.
Right. All right. Last question I got here, Dave. What are some words of wisdom you have for fellow Christian creatives? Either just some those who are listening and looking to use their God-given gifts, maybe photography, maybe something else, or those looking to get into photography. Just some words of wisdom or some tips that you might have for those other fellow Christian creatives out there listening today.
Well, I would say to make sure that whatever it is, make it authentic, because there's nothing more attractive than an authentic Christian, or for that matter, anybody else in any walk of life.
Yeah.
When you know that you may not believe their story, but you know that they do believe it.
Right.
And so you got to be rock solid in your faith. That kind of brings up a little bit about my faith walk.
Yeah.
I was baptized and confirmed Lutheran.
Yeah.
And at that time, there wasn't anything for the youth very much. In northern Illinois, we were a Lutheran Church of America is what it was at the time, before there had been a lot of consolidation in the different churches.
Right.
And so the parents breathe a sigh of relief. Their job is done. And then there wasn't much to keep us active. And so by the time I went to college, I was a sociology major, and I was very interested also in philosophy, the questions of why are we here, what is life, all of that.
Right.
I took philosophy or religion courses. I came away with the modern cultural view that there's many paths to God, which I know now is not true.
Right.
We're very lucky He gave us one.
Yes, true.
I've heard some great sermons on that.
Right, exactly.
But at any rate, I fell away from the faith from the time I was 20 until I was 45 years old.
Wow.
And I was very successful in business and as a computer consultant. I went back to DePaul University in 1985, and they had a second career program if you had a degree in anything but computer science.
Yeah.
And I wiped out their aptitude test so bad they accused me of cheating. So I took it a second time, being proctored, and I got a higher score. And I said, now, how did I do that? So that's one of my favorite stories.
I love it.
But at any rate, I tried everything but God's way. And one of my favorite Bible study teachers at Redeemer over the years, who led the men's ministry for 25 years, Daryl Kalinsky, used to say, I always, my plan was plan A and God's plan was plan B. And until you get that straight, life doesn't go so awful well.
Right.
And so I tried just about everything the world had to offer. I'm a big fan of Ecclesiastes. I understand that, what he went through.
Yeah.
And amazingly enough, in modern times, we could probably do a whole lot more stuff than Solomon could.
Right.
With technology, we can do things bigger, better, faster, or worse.
Right. Could be.
And so if somebody has 3 hours for a lunch with me and wants to buy lunch, they could hear the whole sordid story. But I lost both of my parents when I was in my 40s. It totally destroyed me without faith. Yeah. I had a divorce. I was traveling 100,000 miles a year for business, and to the outside, looked like, it was very successful. It's like these celebrities. But everybody's got, dysfunctional stuff going on.
Sure.
So I came to the end of my rope, and I was on the bottom of the ocean, proverbial rock bottom, as low as you could get. And I looked up, and in my mind, there was Jesus laughing at me. And he said, you're the most stubborn one I've ever had. I've got work for you to do. Get up. And I was 45. I'm 70 now. So I had 25 years away from the faith. I've had 25 years on fire. And I would not trade this most recent 25 years for anything.
I bet not.
I also wouldn't trade the 25 previous years for anything because it's made me a better witness.
Yeah.
My pastors bring me people that have got drug or alcohol addictions.
Mm-hmm.
They bring me people that have depression. They have people that have all the stuff that I've authentically gone through.
Yeah.
And I tell them not to bring them to me until they're ready. I never believe that interventions or any of that stuff works until somebody's ready. They just get mad at the world and walk out. It's no good. But when somebody has actually come to the end of themselves, the prodigal son has got nothing on me. I love that. He came to himself. When he finally came to himself, it worked out.
You bring up a great point. We always describe that wandering in the wilderness, right, time, and it's different for everybody. Having gone through that for an extended period of time in your life, would you have been open if someone had kind of forced their way in with the message as opposed to having to really just be allowed to go through that? Mm-hmm. Because I think, again, a lot in the church just feel like you got a hammer at home to somebody and they're going to get it. But there is something to be said for letting go and letting God, right? And everybody's got their own time. And if God gives them the time and, they come around in that time, that's probably the way they need to be brought to Christ, wouldn't you say?
That was my case. I like to say that my baptism left a smoldering ember that was just smoking. Mm-hmm. It was almost out.
Right.
And he fanned it back into a flame for me.
Yeah.
So I credit my baptism like Luther would with, it's very important.
Right.
So that's a huge thing. I think that maybe some people would be open to the Kennedy evangelism where you knock on the doors and if you died tonight, what would happen in your face? I mean, I'm sure it works occasionally.
Yeah.
Or maybe a Billy Graham altar call, but, we don't believe in decision theology, at least in Lutheranism. So,
exactly.
You can't really wrap your mind around that quite. We'll probably laugh when we get to heaven about these questions, though, because it'll all look stupid.
We realize, I was wrong on that one.
It's like, why do I even worry about that?
Yeah, exactly.
I think if you go back to the basics, like C.S. Lewis describes in Mere Christianity, if you believe these core beliefs, that's fine. We can argue over the rest for the next 2,000 years. It doesn't really matter until he comes back.
Having that relationship with Christ is the bottom line, really.
Yeah, in my case, there were people that honestly saw that I was lost and tried to love on me and were gently suggesting that I get involved back in church or that I was missing something. And what I didn't know was there was that God-sized hole in my heart that only that one jigsaw puzzle piece will fit because he designed us that way.
Yeah.
And once I got that locked back in, it's amazing. I wouldn't trade the peace, the comfort, the joy that I have.
Yeah.
I understand joy now. It's not happiness. It's not dependent upon circumstances.
Right.
I wish we didn't have the pursuit of happiness in our Constitution, right?
Right. It's true.
Or Declaration of Independence, whichever one it is.
And God doesn't promise happiness all life, right?
Oh, no, he promises a daily cross. Mm-hmm. I've always said, you know what, the Army has be all you can be, and there's always great recruiting things.
Right.
Follow me and suffer. I mean, just doesn't seem to be a great great branding.
Doesn't bring them in the way it used to. Oh, that's true. I would love to get in depth with your story more too, and maybe we'll have you back again, and we can talk more about that and get into even more photographs and stuff like that. So I would love to do that. Maybe just as a final thing, what's a final takeaway you'd like to leave our audience with about photography or about faith, or the intersection of both?
Well, there's a great intersection there because just that sharing God's creation and glorifying Him through that has opened up a lot of conversations for me. Yeah. I'm always open to conversations, even if I prayed for patience back in '97 when I started my computer repair business, and I've gotten a chance to practice it every day. Yeah. I'll get in a short line at the store and there'll be a problem. I just turn that whole line into a party. God put that person there for some reason for me to talk to him, and I understand the urgency of spreading the gospel. I might be the only one that person ever hears it from. Yeah, they could be in the same boat that I was in when I was so lost. So that's absolutely amazing. I guess the other thing is that if you find somebody coming to your church or maybe to your Bible study or within your sphere of friends that has just come back to the faith, please be an encourager, because I could do a couple of hours on the number of people at Redeemer that have kind of nudged me this way and nudged this lost soul that way. And then I wake up in Africa, and somehow our project has seen over 300,000 people with the gospel now.
Wow.
I mean, it just brings me to tears thinking about God used this guy.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
I love that.
It's pretty amazing
how God works through each of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And He uses us to glorify Him and bring others to belief in Jesus. Love it.
And never be afraid of not having the right words. I hear that an awful lot. The fears that people have of witnessing have never once happened to me. No, I've never gotten in a fist fight. I've had people twice, like I said, politely refuse to be prayed over.
Right.
Most people are happy to have you pray over them.
Sure.
You know, they think, well, maybe it'll work.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So,
what do I got to lose?
but as far as the words go, He's going to supply them. He promised to.
Yeah.
And it's happened every single time. And you feel like you're having an out of body or a third person experience where you're watching Him work through somebody else. And that's a lesson I've learned from Kenya, because there was one day where I prayed over more than 200 people in one day, individually, exactly what they had asked for.
Yeah.
And no two were the same, and it wasn't me doing it. It's absolutely powerful. I've never been afraid really too much to pray in public anyway, but you know, that's totally gone now. I mean, I'll pray on the drop of a hat.
When we let go of our own inhibitions and just kind of let God take control, it's amazing what He can do through us and through others. Dave, thank you. I've really enjoyed being able to sit here and talk photography and faith. I feel like we only scratched the surface, but that just means we'll have to have you back maybe after another mission trip or something. But thank you so much for being on today and sharing this with me and my audience.
I'd love that. Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me.
One of the earliest surviving photographs that we know of today is titled View from the Window at Le Gras, taken by Nicéphore Niepce in a commune in France called Saint-Lô de Varennes, somewhere between 1826 and 1827. The process of taking a photo used to be much more complicated than it is today. To capture this moment in time, Niepce, after much trial and error, used a combination of a light-sensitive petroleum-based substance on a pewter plate, so that, after 8 hours, the outdoor light itself would etch the image onto the plate, creating a rudimentary photo. He then developed this picture by washing away all the unhardened materials, revealing an image of the rooftops and trees visible from his studio window. The first photograph was born. Niepce himself called it heliography, or light writing. As Christians, we can think of ourselves as light writers. We are called to share the light of Christ with others through our lives, to be the instruments through which God works to write His word onto the hearts of those around us. So, how do you shine the light of Christ to those around you? How do you use your creative gifts to reflect the glory of God? Perhaps, like Dave DeVore, you are using photography to help illuminate God's creation, to call attention to not only the beauty of all that God has created, but also to the fact that the world and the entire universe gives absolute witness to the existence of God Himself. It's in the color, the light, in the variety, in the complex and the simple, and in the amazing design of creation itself. As you strive to find ways to use your talents as a creative and your life as a Christian to highlight who gave you those gifts and light the way to Christ, you in turn glorify God. When you recognize that you are here to point the way to the ultimate creative, God Himself, not to merely live a life of empty pursuits, but one of great purpose that has eternal impact on the lives of others, then you suddenly see how much God loves you and will use your gifts to serve Him in amazing ways. Much like Dave DeVore, truly one of the creative Christians. that does it for this episode of Creative Christians. Thanks for listening. Go to Apple Podcasts or whatever your favorite podcast distributor is, and be sure to subscribe to catch each and every new episode. I'd really appreciate it if after listening you take a moment to rate the show. It helps me to gauge feedback and in rankings for the podcast. If you're really feeling generous, I'd love it if you left a brief review as well. Let me and others know what you like about Creative Christians. You can also email me directly with your feedback, comments, or questions at tim@timristow.com. That's TIMRISTOW.com. I'd love to hear from you. I'm Tim Ristow. Until next time, stay creative and stay in God's Word. Blessings. Creative Christians is produced by yours truly, Tim Ristow. Special thanks to my guest today, Dave DeVore. And, as always, a shout out to my lovely and supportive wife, Tracy Ristow. Creative Christians is an audio production of Tim Ristow Productions. Visit timristow.com to learn more. That's TIMRISTOW.com.